Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our community Q&A here on Facebook Live and our flood response to this 2020 river breakup. I'm Adam Hardiman with the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo. So glad you could join us once again on this Friday afternoon. Today, I'm joined once again by our Mayor, Don Scott, our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, our Chief Administrative Officer, Jamie Doyle, and our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Matthew Hupp. If you'd like to ask a question, make sure to get it in the comments right below this video, and this video will be available in its entirety following today's Q&A. Of course, you can always check out rmwb.ca for all the latest information and sign up for real-time updates at rmwb.ca/flood update. As well, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, and any questions you might have, our pulse line is available 24/7, 780-743-7000, rmwb.ca/pulse. For the latest information on our rivers in the community, you can always visit rivers.alberta.ca. So we're going to go to some opening remarks before we get to our first set of questions. At this time, our Mayor, Don Scott.
Hello, everyone, and it's good to be back. Now, we're making significant progress. Scott Davis is going to talk about the release that came out today, which is going to permit many residents to go back and check out their houses downtown. I want to make sure that we are tempering expectations. There are many, many challenges ahead. And one of those challenges is utilities. I spoke to ATCO Electric and ATCO Gas this morning. There is going to be power issues and gas issues for a while. To give you a sense of that, when I spoke to ATCO Electric, they have 2,500 customers that are off, that the power is not running. So the power is running downtown in some areas, but the backbone of the system is going to be up and running by Sunday, is what they indicated to me. They are going to need to go house to house for many of the properties. So please be patient and be aware of that. They do have approximately 40 staff and 20 to 30 power line technicians who are helping out. As far as the gas is concerned, ATCO Gas has doubled the number of people, and much like the electric side, they are both working 24 hours a day, they indicated to me. There's 2,049 customers without gas, and they have safety checks that they're doing. All of downtown, except for the hospital and the fire hall, is without gas. They could not give me a timeline, but they are working, and they promised me they're doing everything they can to restore service as fast as possible. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. So as people re-enter their properties and check out the properties, please talk to your insurance company. That is something that is absolutely vital. Many people may not have the coverage they anticipate, so I want people to be ready for that. And when you are not sure who to turn to, there's a couple numbers I'm going to give you. One is Samaritan's Purse. They're going to be up and running tomorrow. They're not up and running yet. But the one that is up and running today is the Red Cross. If you're not sure where to turn, if you're just have questions, their number is 1-800-863-6582. They are available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for information and assistance. Now, if you own a business and you're not sure where to turn, a similar situation, maybe you are uninsured or underinsured. If you have questions or you need support, economic development can be reached at 1-855-923-2338. So please be aware of that. If you want to volunteer, if there's somebody in the community who wants to volunteer, woodbuffalovolunteers.ca is where you can reach out and register. If you are going back into your property and you see that you have damage, please, I've tried to repeat this as many times as possible, please avoid contractors who are what I consider ambulance chasing contractors. That means they have no vested interest in this community and they're not here for the long term. Please choose local contractors. It is absolutely imperative. What happened after the fire is contractors came here, they took deposits, or they did shoddy work, and then they immediately disappeared. You want somebody vested in this community so that they're going to be here for the long haul and make sure that you are looked after. And if there's any follow-up issues, you want someone local who can come and take care of it. Hire local, please, and do that. And the municipality is doing the exact same thing. I can advise you, I've talked to Murray Crawford from the hospital. Medical care in the region is strong. We had 22 physician offices that were impacted by the flood. Many of those have been relocated to Stony Creek, but they are very optimistic that things are very strong there. I can also give you an update. I spoke to Fire Chief Jody Butts within the last hour. He advised me that the water levels are down significantly. So we are feeling very optimistic about that. And our friends from Syncrude and Suncor, they are the key companies that have shown up, as they always do, have provided 10 pumps that are working between Prairie Loop and waterways. Because the water levels are decreasing, the underground services are kicking the water out, and water levels are decreasing at a massive rate. So we're seeing huge strides. Many thanks to Suncor and Syncrude, but we have, in addition to what's happening with our underground services, we have 10 pumps that are getting the water out. Many thanks to Suncor and Syncrude for all their help. You know, when you need help, they're always at our side. So that's what's happening there. If you are accessing downtown or some other area, please be aware that there are still hazards out there. We're hearing that there are some sinkholes in some areas because of all the flooding that took place. So please be careful as you navigate your way around. You're going to hear this, I believe, more than once today, but fees at the dump are going to be waived at the landfill for everyone. So that's going to be for a while. So just be aware of that as we go forward. I'm going to read a few specific messages that I want to make sure everybody hears. We're getting questions about fridges. First step, go to the insurance company. See if your insurance company is going to cover your fridge or your freezer, and that's step one. Step two is to talk to Samaritan's Purse or the Red Cross, but please start with that step. So many of you weren't able to return to your homes or businesses yet. We are stressing patience for now. We are anticipating further announcements by tomorrow, we hope, but that is a hope. And just because the property is dry doesn't mean it's safe. So please be careful when you go to your properties. And some of you may be surprised to find water and in some cases sewage in your basements. Call your insurance company. If you don't have insurance, as I said, reach out to the Red Cross to see a list of supports that may be available. And once again, Samaritan's Purse is also going to be on the ground. Now, if your home is not safe and you're not sure where to stay tonight and you don't have a family or friend that you can stay with, please call the Red Cross. I'm going to say that number one more time. That's 1-800-863-6582. And the call lines are going to be open late. So please be aware of that. This was an unprecedented flood. It's a 1 in 100 year event. I can tell you that the staff here, when we've asked them to bust their ass to get things ready for this community, and that's exactly what they're doing, but they need to do it safely. So as much as we've implored them to bust their ass to get people back into their homes, they're going to do it safely, and that's why we do need some patience, but we are working extremely hard. I've seen it firsthand. I can tell you they're working nonstop. So with that, I will turn it back over to Adam.
Well, thanks very much, Mayor Scott. And just before I turn things over to Scott Davis, just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please do so in the comments section right below the video. You can watch this video in its entirety following today's community Q&A, which we're happy to bring to you for the fourth consecutive day as we recover together from this historic flooding event. So thank you, Mayor Scott. And of course, right now we're going to go to our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis.
Thank you, Mayor Scott, and I appreciate your support for local business. I do as well. We've had no evacuees registered since yesterday. We remain at 7,541. Water levels continue to drop, and we're seeing ice melt at the mouth of the Clearwater River. The mandatory evacuation order for the following areas has been lifted: McDonald Island, all downtown streets northwest of Rydell Street, all downtown streets northwest of King Street between Highway 63 and Franklin Ave. There are no restrictions to accessing properties in these areas. However, structures may have been damaged. Residents and business owners are advised to use caution upon re-entry. Properties in these areas may have experienced water damage and backups. Utilities have not been fully restored. Everyone returning home needs to consider the following. 1. Homes may not be safe to occupy, and you may not be able to live in your home. 2. Contact your insurance provider about your situation. A boil water advisory remains in effect. Do not drink the water. During the mandatory evacuation, vehicles may have been towed if they've been damaged extensively and were in the way of traffic or have been obstructing response efforts. Towed vehicles can be collected through the towing FMG Energy Services. A mandatory evacuation order remains in effect for the following areas: all downtown streets in the area located southeast of Rydell Street and northeast of Franklin Ave, waterways, and Draper. Many of you in those areas are wondering when you can come home. The water is receding, and we continue to perform safety inspections to allow us to lift the evacuation order as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Scott, and we're going to get to some questions in just a moment. Before we do that, just a reminder, of course, why there's some good news today. Safety remains of the utmost importance. We're in a state of local emergency, both for river break and the response to this historic flood, but also COVID-19. So safety is as the front of our minds, of course, a very serious situation, but some good news today. Of course, check out rmwb.ca for all those details. So our first question is going to be for our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis. And Scott, I'm going to put together a couple different questions. First one is from, I guess, together, Tom, Justin, and Gert. I guess they all have close to the same question, and Amanda as well. So I'm just going to piece these together, Scott. When can people move back to waterways? Don't group it all together. And from Amanda, what is the timeline for residents in the south end of downtown / Longboat Landing? So Scott, maybe you can give us an update on why this initial first release of the mandatory evacuation, what we can see next and why.
Thank you for all your questions. As we continue to evaluate, number one consideration is safety. I realize that as a homeowner, you want to get back to home as quick as possible. There's a lot of unknowns that we haven't assessed yet, and we want to be cognizant of critical infrastructure that might be of damage, so that's hydro or electricity as well as gas lines. We also know that there's some sinkholes in some of the areas, and without properly assessing those, we could potentially put people at risk of their lives, and we don't want to do that. So I know it's hard. Please have patience. We're trying to work as quickly as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And a reminder as well to head to rivers.alberta.ca for the latest view of water levels in the region. Of course, we remain under a state of local emergency due to that event, and the rivers have not officially broken, according to Alberta Environment Parks. Something to keep in mind as we work through this together as a community. Next question, I'm actually going to go to Mayor Scott for this one, if we can. This question is from Josh. Josh asks, I'm curious what other nonprofit groups you are connecting with. As a church leader, we have connected with a number of people and groups. Is there a way to coordinate a response for people and groups that want to help? So Mayor Scott, maybe you can speak to that. And if Scott, you wanted to follow up, that'd be good as well.
Yeah, I can say that I've been reaching out to many of them directly just to find out what the situation is, including the Food Bank, SOS, many others in the region. And we've also asked the Red Cross to take a lead on connecting with all the groups because they may be in a position to coordinate assistance across those groups. So we are in touch with many of those groups, and we're hoping that as needs become known, that this community steps forward as it always has and makes sure that they receive the support they need. We're also getting support from other communities. There's been a lot of requests for, how can we help? That's very common. We live in an amazing province and an amazing city here. So I'm expecting we're going to see a lot of help pour in, and it's going to go to a good place.
And along those lines, and thank you, Mayor Scott, and thank you, Josh, for the question. A huge thank you to all of our volunteers, as well as all of the social profit and not-for-profit organizations in the community that have stepped up to help us through this challenging time. We could probably spend the rest of the hour giving thank you and giving a shout-out to them, so thank you once again. Next question is going to be for Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. It's about our boil water advisory. I'm going to combine two questions, so thank you very much. Anita and Michelle here. So Anita asks, is there still a water boil advisory, and why is it necessary? And from Michelle, Can you give an estimate on when it will be lifted?
Good day, everyone, and thank you, Anita and Michelle, for those questions. And yes, there is still a boil water advisory in effect. And for those who are moving back into the downtown area today, it's very important that you remember that this is indeed the case, and your water needs to be boiled before consuming it. I noticed a lot of questions regarding the cause of the boil water advisory. And so I just want to be very clear that what caused it was the mixing of river water with our treated water, causing the water to be turbid or unclear. There is an extensive planning process going on right now to flush our entire system. A number of you have received tweets requesting help with that by turning on faucets at particular times. This will be continuing until Alberta Health Services is satisfied that our water has returned to a pristine state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you, Anita and Michelle, for those questions. Certainly something on our minds, and remember to check out all that information about that advisory at rmwb.ca, and thank you to all the residents for their cooperation. Next question is from Rory. It's going to be for our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis. Rory asks, what is being done to restrict access to neighborhoods still under mandatory evacuation? Scott.
Thank you, Rory. We continue to work with the Rcmp as well as our own bylaw officers in trying to control access into those areas and ensure that the homes and businesses that are in those areas are secure.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Rory, for that question. Next question is from Jennifer. Jennifer is asking, what's the status of our only hardware stores? Are either viable? Where will we get supplies to fix our houses and businesses? I know that we are working to create a list of essential businesses and critical infrastructure, so maybe, Scott, you could give an update on that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a continually evolving situation, and we're doing assessments to help support business get back up as quickly as possible. What we haven't completed is the assessment in some of what we're calling the wet areas, so those that were impacted by Overland. So local hardware stores may have been in those. Those assessments haven't been completed. We're trying to get those completed as quick as possible.
Thank you for that, Scott, and thank you once again, Jennifer, for the question, for all our residents for joining us this week and here today. Get that question in if you have one in the comment box right below our live video. We're going to go next to a question about local contractors. We're going to ask our Chief Administrative Officer as well as Mayor Scott towards the back end. So I'm actually going to combine three different questions, so it's just going to take a minute here, and then we'll ask Jamie and Mayor to come up. First question is from Josh. Josh says, is the list of local contractors available? Diane asks, realizing there's not a way the RMWB can control who the public hires for the rebuild, will the municipality then stand behind what it's been saying and make sure it's been saying and make sure that all the rebuild go to local contractors versus the cheapest company? And Kristen asks, for the contractors and the people coming in from other cities to help with the rebuild, will they be screened for COVID before they can come here, or what are you going to do to help protect us from further spreading the virus? So I guess we'll actually just ask Jamie to take that to start with, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for all the questions. But I'll go back to the start with Josh's question about the list of local contractors. That's a very good question. We're compiling that list now with the Chamber of Commerce, the Wood Buffalo Economic Development Corporation, as well as the Construction Association. Through the Chamber, we'll also post that list so it's readily available. Diane's question about realizing the lack of control through hiring. While you're right, Diane, we cannot control who individuals hire to do their own remediation work and rebuilds. As I mentioned many times, where possible and whenever possible, we will be utilizing local contractors to help in a cleanup from a municipal infrastructure perspective. And as for the COVID virus, every contract we enter in, there are verbiage and contract clauses around COVID and how to keep our distances and how to protect ourselves. So that's how we control that way. From a private perspective, I would ask that each individual homeowner that are hiring contractors have those conversations with those builders to make sure that they're all adequately protected as well.
Thank you all of you for those questions. Thank you, Jamie, for the response. COVID-19, state of local emergency, state of provincial emergency, still in effect, the largest pandemic in the last 100 years in Canada. All guidelines will have to be followed by everyone. So our next question, we're going to go back to our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, going to combine a question from Gert and a question from Rory. Gert is asking, when I return from Edmonton, do I need to register with the RMWB Evacuation Center that currently located still at Casman Center in Thickwood? I don't think there were any registrations today, Scott, if I'm not mistaken. And Rory is asking, do you need to register with Red Cross to qualify for the funding on Monday? So Rory, what I think you're referring to is the announcement the government of Alberta made for that funding that's going to be available on Monday. I don't believe you have to register with Red Cross for that specifically, but I'll ask Scott to clarify that for sure for everyone that's paying attention here online. That's $1,250 per adult and $500 for every dependent. Those details at alberta.ca/emergency. Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. Currently, we're in the steps of closing down the Casman Center. Those individuals that are currently there are being relocated into hotels in Fort McMurray. The evacuation registration with Red Cross is 1-800-863-6582. So I encourage you to reach out to that number and register.
Thanks very much for that, Scott, and thank you, Gert and Rory, for those important questions. And a reminder to look at the details of the government funding announced by the government of Alberta earlier this week, and will be available on Monday. Head to alberta.ca/emergency. Our next question is from Donna. We're going to answer that question in just a minute, but I am going to go to our Director of Emergency Management for it. Donna asks, why are people going back if there's no gas or power? Scott.
Thank you. We understand the concern that people want to get back into their homes as quick as possible. We're trying to balance with that, getting people into their homes to have a look, as well as understanding the needs for safety with gas and power. So to answer the question, it's a hard one. We want people to be able to see their homes, but stay safe.
Thank you, Scott, for that. And thank you, Donna, for the question. Visit rmwb.ca. You can see the announcement we made earlier today and find out all the details about the lifting of the mandatory evacuation for certain neighborhoods in our downtown. Next question is from Amanda. I'm going to go back to our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis. Amanda asks, it looks like Walmart may have been spared. Do you have any comments on whether or not there was water inside some of our other major buildings like Walmart or Superstore? So Scott, maybe you can speak to that rapid damage assessment.
Thank you. Our rapid damage assessment team went in, from the exterior, looked at a number of different residences as well as the businesses. We're waiting on hearing from the owners of those businesses as to the structures as well as the capacity to reopen as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much for that, Scott. And we'll go to our next question. Of course, thanks, Amanda, for your question. If you want to get a question in, make sure to put put that right below the video in the comment box. Thank you so much for joining us once again on our 4th day. Next week, we'll be moving these Facebook Live events to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Of course, we'll still have our telephone town halls on Thursday night. You can always access information for the municipality at rmwb.ca through regular signups at rmwb.ca/flood update. You can also, river breakup, my mistake, rmwb.ca/river breakup. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You can always call the Pulse line at 780-743-7000. Getting a lot of questions about the Canadian Red Cross. We're a major partner for us during the wildfire and in recovery, and once again, back in the community. Gert asks, when will Red Cross funding be released? You'll have to speak to the Red Cross to register with them, to speak to them. You can call 1-800-863-6582. We do know that there are thousands of people that have registered so far. They've taken over 6,000 calls from our residents. So once again, that number with the Canadian Red Cross is 1-800-863-6582. And I was pretty smooth there. I forgot my next question over on the other desk, so thanks for bearing with me. These next two I'm going to combine together. They'll be for our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. Danielle asks, Thickwood and Timberley flushing water lines last night. Does this mean we will see the boil water advisory lifted soon for north of the bridge? And Ashley asks, there have been people saying they feel they are getting GI symptoms for ingesting the water, either from washing hands or dishes. Is there a bacteria issue with the water, or is it just silt in it? We'll go to Matthew.
Thank you. So as far as the drinking water guideline that was exceeded, it was turbidity. I spoke about this a couple of days ago. It means that the water is no longer considered to be clear. The instructions that Alberta Health Services gives when a boil water advisory is in place is to bring your water to a rolling boil for at least a minute before consuming. Now, I understand the concern. I live in Timberley also. I wash in the water that comes out of the tap. I consume the boiled water that I have on my stove. If there are any people who are experiencing gastrointestinal symptoms, please consult a doctor for yourself. I have not to this date received any confirmed cases. So again, the instructions are very clear. Boil water advisory is in place until it is lifted. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ashley, as well as Danielle. And thank you, Matthew, for the response. Next question is from Amanda. I'm going to just speak to the second part of your question, Amanda. I think Matthew addressed your question about the boil water and the water situation with you living in Abisan. Once again, a boil water advisory is in effect there. Your question about Canada Post, which is when will we be getting Canada Post set up somewhere else so we can get our mail? It's an evolving situation. As you know, the Canada Post main depot is downtown. I'd go to canadapost.ca. We know that they're going to be posting updates there. There's also a phone number you can call about that. But we can assure you that your mail is secure, and as soon as it's possible and safe to do so, mail service will resume in Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo. This question is going to be for the Director of Emergency Management. It's from Cheryl. Cheryl asks, lodgings are telling us that our accommodations end on Sunday, even for those still under mandatory evacuation. What do we do next? Scott?
Thank you. The best advice I can give you is to contact the Red Cross at 1-800-863-6582, where your call will be answered and advice be given that'll help you with this question.
Thanks for that, Scott, and thank you, Cheryl, for the question. Reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please go to the comment box right underneath the live video. Live video will be posted in its entirety following today's community Q&A. Next question is from Rick. I think we'll go to Mayor Scott for this one. Rick asks, will there be some kind of hotline or online registry where citizens can alert the city, the Rcmp, about scams and fraud relating to recovery and rebuild? Perhaps this can be supported by the province. Mayor Scott.
Thanks very much, Rick. So there is a number you can use to report. So during a state of local emergency, it is improper for anyone to price gouge. So if you see someone that is price gouging, there is a number you can call, and it is supported by the province. It's 1-877-427-4088. So I'll say that again. It's 1-877-427-4088, and that's for any reporting you want to do regarding any ripoffs. One thing I just want to supplement what was just said in the last discussion. I think the question was, if you are under a mandatory evacuation, is your hotel stay going to be extended? And all the discussions I've had lead me to believe that yes, it is. So just be aware of that. I just want to make sure that's nice and clear. There was also a discussion earlier that I want to make sure is nice and clear. Innova is not open. There was a map that was initially shared that showed that it was open. We've since corrected this, but I want to make sure that everyone realizes that Innova at this time is not open yet.
Thanks for that, Mayor Scott, and thanks, Rick, for the question. We know incredible efforts there at the Innova Eco-Industrial Park, a partnership between the municipality, our Regional Emergency Coordination Center, and Syncrude to pump out thousands of gallons of water. So a huge thank you to Syncrude, Suncor, and all our industry partners as we navigate this together. Next question, I'm going to go to our Chief Administrative Officer, Jamie Doyle, from Diane. Diane asks, the RMWB puts out tenders, so how will they ensure that local companies get the right to rebuild? Jamie.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Diane, for the question. And you're right. Under a normal process, we do put out tenders, and they are bidded on, and we award them through our trade agreement processes and making sure we're staying within that letter of the law. However, in this particular instance, we're under a state of local emergency, which gives us an opportunity to do a direct procurement process to go to the experts that we need to take out the jobs that we need done.
Thanks for that, Diane, and thank you, Jamie. Next question is from Christopher. I'm going to go to Scott Davis, our Dem, for this. Christopher asks, is there an update on the current state of the ice jam on the Clearwater River? Scott.
Thank you for your question, and what I would encourage you to do is visit rivers.alberta.ca, as the conditions are continually changing and it's hard for us to keep up. So that's where our source is. So again, rivers.alberta.ca. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Scott, and thank you, Christopher, for the question. We can tell you that there's been a significant reduction in that ice jam, but like the Dem says, go to rivers.alberta.ca for that latest information. Certainly a key component in this. We remain under a state of local emergency, and the rivers have not been declared officially broken by the Alberta government at this time. So safety still of the utmost importance. Next question is Joanne. I am going to go back to Scott. I know you walked over, but I'm making Scott work out as much as possible, but that's good because he's answering your questions. So I'm going to ask the question here from Joanne, and probably an important one. Did they cut all the power downtown or just the flooded area? So Scott, maybe you can speak to what happened there in that process.
Out of safety, ATCO cut the power grid to the downtown area. We understand that there were some homes that are certainly affected by that cut of electricity. They've got a mapping tool that is showed throughout the duration of the incident and the progression. So at any time, if we were asked, we could tell you when your hydro was turned off.
I'm going to ask our Director of Emergency Management to stay right there because I do got another question for him, if that's okay. This question's from Bill. Bill is asking, will the RMWB be conducting inspection of houses, or is that left for homeowners to do? Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Our rapid assessment team did an initial inspection of the outside of homes as well as businesses. So they looked for structural integrity, for example, things like foundations that might be sinking. But anything within the interior of your home would be you and an assessor from your insurance company.
Thanks for that, Bill, and thank you, Scott, once again. A reminder, ask a question in the comment box right below the video. So happy you could join us once again today on Friday. Our fourth straight day of these Facebook community Q&As. We're going to be back on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week, in addition to our telephone town hall on Thursday, and of course, all the regular updates that are available to you at rmwb.ca, as well as the updates from our many partners supporting the entire community in our response to this historic event. Question here from Josh. I'm going to go to Mayor Scott. Josh asks, what's the best way for people to help right now?
You know, there is a lot we can do to help our neighbors. There's no place in the world like Fort McMurray as far as helping each other. We've done it over and over and over again. We have come through many crises before. We're going to get through this one, but I'm going to give you some ideas about what you can do. One thing is, if you see a first responder or an Rcmp member or somebody who's involved in the emergency services arena who's been helping with the evacuation, tell them how much you appreciate all the good work they're doing. They are really working hard. If you want to donate to the Red Cross, there's a number there, 1-800-863-6582. They can use your support. Samaritan's Purse is going to be up and running tomorrow, and I'm sure they could use assistance as well. You know, we have a lot of nonprofits in this town, including the Food Bank and many others. Consider it a donation to them. You know, find out what they need. The Food Bank set up in another area, they are going to need help. We are getting support from food banks of Alberta in the south, and they're shipping food up, but there's always going to be a need for support. If you want to volunteer, there is going to be a lot of volunteer opportunities in this community. There's a lot of people that need to clean up a lot of areas, so if you want to volunteer, you can register at woodbuffalovolunteers.ca if you want to volunteer, and I would deeply appreciate it if everyone in this community would make sure that you're following the COVID-19, all the policies that are in place for that, but help your neighbor as much as you're able. Stay safe, but protect each other and look after each other.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor Scott. Thank you, Josh, for the question. More importantly, thank you to our residents, our evacuees, for their strength and resilience in getting through this. And then, of course, our volunteers, the outpouring of our community, as well as our first responders and everyone that's working on this incredible community once again coming together. So, Kathy, I know that question, sorry, from Kathy. I know Mayor Scott just spoke to this, so I'm just going to answer if that's okay. Kathy asks, is there an update on when businesses will have access to Innova? So the Innova Eco Industrial Park, work is still ongoing there, water being flushed out. So there is no access currently for businesses, but I know it's a top priority of the Regional Emergency Coordination Center. And we'll get that information out when it becomes available. Thanks. I'm going to go back to our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, for this question from Tamika. Tamika asks, how is the RMWB factoring COVID-19 into this? There are several people in hotels and camps. That is sure to create a surge in cases. Is this factored into return home measures?
Thank you, Tamika, for your question. All throughout the process of response as well, now that we've gone into recovery phase, we've had representatives from Alberta Health Services helping us in our Regional Emergency Coordination Center. We also had at the reception centers representatives from Alberta Health Services helping guide us in this unique change. We started planning for evacuation centers for river breakup as far back as December prior to COVID. They were instrumental in helping us develop the new procedures such as the drive-through center. So without their support, we would certainly have further difficulties. They also helped us in the development of our reception centers. So when we looked at hotels and looked at the camps, again, Alberta Health Services having that liaison officer right in the coordination center with us certainly helped.
So thank you for that, Tamika, and thank you, Scott, for the response. Going to go to Matthew Huff, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. So two questions. So Matthew, maybe I'll ask the first one. You can answer it, and I'll ask the second one. They're not quite related. First one is from Marion. Was it only overland flooding, or was there sewage flooding?
Thank you, Marion. I think your question pertains to whether the water was affected by overland flooding or there was sewage involved. Sewage was not involved. This was the blending of river water with our treated water. And I know that there have been concerns because, of course, in the downtown area, sewage has been a significant concern for us. So I hope that answer will suffice. Adam has another water-related question, however. Are you going to enforce the fire ban to prevent fires in the area? So a different topic. So the fire ban that was put in place by the government of Alberta. So that remains. It's related to COVID-19 and trying to reduce the likelihood of a wildfire. Again, that question has been posed before, and certainly if you're looking for more information, take a look at the Government of Alberta website. Another question that I'll tackle. The question is from Anne. Is there an investigation into the water treatment plant issues to prevent this from happening next year? Yes, indeed. So I'll start from the beginning and maybe give a bit of an explanation as to what is being done to solve the immediate concern and what we will be doing in the future. The first thing that was done was to ensure that no more river water would combine with our treated water. That has been done. Now, a plan is in place, and it's actually being executed in real time to flush not only our reservoirs throughout the city, but also the pipes. And that's what people have been asked to assist with. As far as what we'll be doing in the future, we'll be taking a look at the level at which the river reached, which we believe at this stage to be a 1 in 100. That means likely to occur only once, one time in 100 years, and determine what infrastructure improvements we should make to ensure that if we're subject to this type of flood again, that we don't experience this type of impact on our potable water. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for those questions, and thank you, for Matthew, for not only answering the two questions that I wanted you to answer, but the one question that was probably for a Director of Emergency Management. So we're not going to leave you up there for the entire thing, I promise, but thank you very much. Next question is for Jessica, and we're going to go to Scott for this one. Jessica asks, when we re-enter in areas that have been underwater, do we need ATCO to check it first? Or can we just get any master electrician? So we can speak to the electricity restoration process, Scott.
Thank you, Jessica. ATCO is the energy provider and will do all the inspections to ensure the integrity as the surface runs to your home. As to inside the home, once you get into the walls and infrastructure of the house, I would suggest that your insurance provider take a look at that. Thank you.
So just a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, write in the comment box right below the video. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us here on our fourth Community Q&A. We've got about 15 minutes remaining, I think, from the side here being notified. So 15 minutes left. Get those questions in. Of course, we'll be back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week with more community Q&As as well as our telephone town hall on Thursday nights. You can always follow us at rmw.ca and through our social media channels for real-time updates on this response to this historic event. Next question is from Joanne. Joanne asks, the Alberta government is sending masks to help volunteers. So how will people get them and when? Can our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis, take that?
Thank you, Joanne. We'll continue working with Red Cross as well as Samaritan's Purse and the other volunteer organizations to ensure that all our volunteers comply with and have the personal protective equipment to protect themselves for COVID.
Well, thanks for that, Joanne. Thank you, Scott, for the response. I'm going to go back to Matthew Huff once again. We're getting a lot of questions about the AHS boil water advisory. So we're going to ask Matthew once again to provide a summary of that, provide the reasoning behind it, and what's the current status.
So the current status is that a boil water advisory is in place for the city of Fort McMurray. I will take this opportunity to point out that communities to the south of us, including Conklin, Janvier, and Anzac, are all being served by our water treatment plant in Conklin. So thankfully, the boil water advisory does not affect all of those residents. The boil water advisory will remain in place until Alberta Health Services lifts it. What we are doing to move towards that is flushing our entire system within Fort McMurray. That means flushing out our reservoirs and our pipes. While we're doing that, we ask and, of course, highly recommend that everyone follow that boil water order from Alberta Health Services. As far as a timeline, I can only tell you that at the moment, we should be looking at this as a matter of weeks. Once we have a very clear schedule of flushing, of testing, and of returning our system to its original pristine condition, we'll be more than happy to get that information out to you. In the meantime, the information that matters is that which is coming from AHS. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And once again, you can always visit rmwb.ca for all the latest updates on the AHS boil water advisories or any other information related to River Breakup 2020 and Flood Update 2020. Next question is from Michelle. This is going to go to Scott. Michelle's question is, we need to get into Ptarmigan Park to get our skirting off and the water out of the belly bags of our mobiles before it starts to mold. Let us go back in, please. So let Scott provide an update as to the reasoning for the lifting of the mandatory evacuation in the areas where we've done that and why we still have a mandatory evacuation for those other areas.
Thank you. And I understand you want to get into your home as quick as possible. Our concern is balancing that with safety. We do know from some of the rapid assessments that have been done in the wet areas, we know there's sinkholes. We're also concerned about chemicals and wastewater that's in those areas and it possibly impacting life safety. So at this time, we're enforcing the mandatory evacuation periods. We continue to reevaluate those, and as soon as we can get you back in those areas, we will.
Thank you for that, Scott. We have a little bit over 10 minutes remaining in today's community Q&A here on Facebook. Thanks again for joining us. If you'd like to get a question in, please do so in the next 10 minutes. I know we had a question come in online earlier and I missed it, but the question was about the organizational structure in a state of local emergency. So I don't know if we want Mayor Scott and Scott Davis to weigh in on that. I can certainly answer it if you'd like. But the organizational structure when we go into a state of local emergency. We'll go to Scott Davis for that, and then Scott, I have another question for you as well. So, Scott Davis.
In the regional municipality, emergency management, as well as regional emergency services, uses what's called incident command system. So as we respond to emergency, to effectively stay in our lanes, have an effective response, we follow this system. We continually update mayor and council, as well as our CAO and the senior leadership team.
Thank you for that, Scott. We'll also ask Mayor Scott to add some comments.
Yeah, what was just said, that's all code for who the man who just spoke is the one in charge of a lot of the decisions, but he's running everything by mayor and council, I can say. And I can certainly tell you that mayor and council have had very strong input. We want to see people back in their homes as quickly as possible. We want to see that happen more than anything. We just want it done safely, and that's what's happening. Every time there's a discussion about getting people back in, safety is the priority. But we're going to get people in as soon as we can. We have a lot of challenges in front of us over the next few days. But I do think we're making good progress, solid progress. But stay tuned for more as we go forward the next couple of days.
Thanks for that, Scott, and thank you, Mayor Scott. It can't be reiterated enough that safety has to come first. We're in a state of local emergency. The rivers have not broken, and this event was a 1 in 100 year event. So a historic event for our community and a historic event for our entire region. So that can't be stressed enough against the backdrop of a global pandemic that hasn't happened to this severity in about 100 years. So incredible to see the strength and resilience of this community as we respond to both these challenges together. Next question is from Krista, and I'm going to go back to Matthew Huff. Krista asks, what effect will the sediment in the water have on appliances like washers and dishwashers?
Krista, thank you for this question. You're not the only person to have asked it over the last couple of days, and we are going to prepare some information for residents that will be helpful in the coming days and weeks. In short, the majority of appliances, your home-based fixtures, do have the ability to continue operating as normal with some sediment in water. However, maintenance is required. The analogy that I can make is how often we may change our furnace filters in our homes. If a furnace filter has been in place for too long, it won't operate as designed. So we will get that information prepared and out to you all. Again, though, the priority is everyone's health, and that's why our messaging thus far has focused on the boil water advisory. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for that, and thank you, Krista, for the question. Just got a message as well from Fuse Social. Just want to make sure that if you're looking to volunteer, and I know there's always a need for volunteers despite the incredible outpouring we've seen, you can go to wbvolunteers.ca to sign up and help. Certainly been a challenging few days, we know that, but we have more challenges to come. We need to still come together as community. So again, if you'd like to contribute alongside our efforts, go to wbvolunteers.ca and contact them and find out how you can help. So next question is going to be for our Director of Emergency Management. Question from Libby, question from Lori related to electricity. Libby asks, when was the power turned off? And Lori asks, how long before gas and electric, so ACO gas, ACO electric, to areas like Bell Crescent not affected by flood will be turned back on? Scott, can you provide an update?
Thank you, Libby. The power was turned off shortly after we determined that the rising waters could affect the infrastructure, so things like transformers and such. As to when, how long before gas and electric to areas like Bell Crescent not affected by the flood, one of the things that you have to consider are the transformer stations or the charging stations that might be down from those streets. So while they may not be on your street, they could have been affected further off of the neighborhoods.
Thanks for that, Scott. Thank you for Libby and Lori for the questions, for everyone for joining us on our fourth community Q&A. We've got 5 minutes remaining, so please get those questions in. Next question is from Jamie, and it's not the CAO, I promise you, but a Jamie that's coming online, unless I'm totally mistaken. Question from Jamie is there any support for the underinsured or seniors who are dealing with extensive flood damage? Mayor Scott.
Yeah, we do anticipate that there are a large number of people and businesses who are either underinsured or uninsured. So the Red Cross is going to be one number. I'm going to say that number again, 1-800-863-6582. And Samaritan's Purse, they don't have a line set up here locally yet. There will be a line set up tomorrow. If you run a business that is either underinsured or uninsured, economic development is where you should call 1-855-923-2338. Once we have a better sense of where the numbers are at, we will be lobbying the province as mayor and council to see what additional support we can get, and the federal government. So, it's governments are here to help people, and I'm hoping that we can get support from either the province or the federal government as we go forward. For now, the Red Cross and Samaritan's Purse is where we'll be directing people.
Thanks for that, Mayor Scott, and thank you, Jamie, not the CAO, for that question. So we got two questions from Dia, and I'm going to go back to Matthew Huff, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, probably the game ball going to Mr. Huff here today. Once again, about connected to the water supply. So first question is, Dia asks, we were asked to flush our water for 20 minutes yesterday in Thickwood and Timberley. Will flushing for longer help shorten the flushing of the whole system and get the boil water advisory to end faster? And do we have instruction on how to flush the silt out of our hot water heaters?
Okay, thank you. Both good questions. As far as the instructions on how to flush silt out of the hot water heater or tank, we will put that information together with information on maintaining other home-based fixtures. As far as flushing for 20 minutes yesterday, thank you for those residents who did that. But unfortunately, no, it won't affect how quickly the boil water advisory is lifted, because it's the whole system that has to be in good order before we start to make or before AHS can consider lifting that order. So please stay tuned. Our staff are working as quickly as they can to ensure that our reservoirs and our pipes are pristine, and we will update on timelines as soon as we have them to share. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matthew, and thank you, Dia, for those series of questions. So I think will be our last question for this afternoon. A reminder, we'll be back with additional Facebook Live community Q&As on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. Those are the current days, so that will be available for you, as well as our weekly telephone town hall, now focused on flood updates and river breakup. That takes place on Thursday evening. All the details, rmwb.ca. So we're going to go to Scott Davis for our final set of questions. Getting lots of questions today about Pearson Drive, and of course we remain in a state of local emergency in a historic 1 in 100 year flooding event, in a case where safety has to be of the utmost importance. So questions on Pearson Drive. This one from Brad. Brad says, Pearson Drive and Cote Bay were never flooded. Why can't we go home? Scott.
Thank you, Brad. Understanding that there have been some locations within the municipality that weren't affected by overland flooding. However, it's the critical infrastructure we're concerned about to be able to provide the safety to residents, and we're doing those assessments as quickly as possible.
Thanks again to Scott, and thank you everyone for getting your questions in today. I'd like to thank Mayor Scott, our CAO, our DCAO, Jamie and Matthew, as well as our Director of Emergency Management, Scott Davis. Head to rmwb.ca for the latest updates on River Break 2020, as well as our response to this historic flooding event. All the resources you need are there. You can also get real-time updates. You can sign up for them at rmwb.ca/flood update. Of course, Facebook, Twitter, always available for updates as well from your municipality. And for the latest information on our rivers, go to rivers.alberta.ca. All the information is there from our Government of Alberta partners. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good weekend and stay safe, stay strong. We'll see you again next week.